Alan and Sean here from the Prancing Pony Podcast, welcoming you to the Tolkien Experience Podcast.
The Tolkien Experience Podcast is an attempt to bring the fan and scholarly communities together around our shared passion, the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Each episode features a notable scholar or member of the fan community sharing their Tolkien experience.
And now we'll send you over to Sarah and Luke.
Thanks, Alan. I'm Sarah Brown.
And I'm Luke Shelton.
Every other week, we share with you an interview of a Tolkien scholar or fan.
That's right. In these interviews, one of us asks our guest to respond to 6 questions that help us learn about their personal Tolkien experience.
We are so excited to share this podcast with you. So without any more delay, let me introduce our guest. Hi everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Tolkien Experience podcast. Now today, I'm really excited to introduce a wonderful guest who I've been really looking forward to talking with ever since we decided that we would actually try and put a date in the diary, because this woman is a very busy woman. And I'd love to introduce you to Dr. Yuna McCormack.
Hello.
She's a New York Times best-selling science fiction author.
That's right.
She is passionate about women's writing, science fiction, and helping people find their words and voices. And I'm sure, unless you've been living under a rock, you will have heard of Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope. And that will be published by Simon & Schuster in 2020. Yuna, is that published already?
It's out, yes. It came out just at the start of February. So the show's just finished and the book came out sort of between episodes 3 and 4. So people are kind of getting backstory for that. So yeah, it's out there. My website needs updating, but websites always need updating, don't they?
Of course they do. And the website that Yuna is referring to is unamccormack.co.uk. So do trot on over there afterwards and have a good old rummage through all the things that she's got on there for you. But just to give you a little bit more information about Yuna, she's done a lot of TV tie-in work, published more than a dozen novels set in franchises such as Doctor Who, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Discovery, audio work with Big Finish, which has done things like Doctor Who and Blake 7, and lots of novels like Star Trek Discovery, The Way to the Stars, which won a Dragon Con Award. And in 2017, she was a judge for the Arthur C. Clarke Award. Not only that, but Yuna is, of course, was a university lecturer, teaching creative writing for many years at undergrad and postgrad level, and has supervised creative writing PhDs. In fact, Yuna, did you not supervise a PhD very recently?
Oh, I didn't supervise it. I was the I was the lucky examiner for Luke Shelton. Yeah, and what a treat that was. That was an absolute. Well, first of all, it was a delight to read, and then the Viva was a delight, and then it's always very pleasing to be able to award someone their doctorate. So all in all, a very happy experience. And I hope it was for Luke too. Yeah, it was a great PhD. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, Luke said that he'd had a fantastic experience in his Viva, which I'm not sure everybody can say.
I know I didn't. I had a horrible time. In my Viva, not in that one. I had a lovely time at Luke's, but my own Viva was dreadful. So you kind of you want people to feel safe and comfortable and happy, and be able to relax and talk about the things they love. And we had a great conversation. That's really what it should be about, I think. So a real joy all round.
Sounds like he had the best possible experience in his Viva then. But yes, and obviously congratulations to Dr. Luke Shelton from that.
Luke Shelton. Yeah, that's the nicest bit actually, and it's often your privilege as the external examiner. So I wasn't the member of staff at Glasgow to be able to be the first person to say congratulations, Dr. Shelton. So it's a really nice moment as an examiner to be able to, the people obviously are quite moved and touched. So it's just lovely all round.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was lovely, because I know Luke was he was very, very happy afterwards. That's for sure.
Very relieved, man. Well earned. Very well earned.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Okay, so now Yuna, obviously there are going to be a lot of people who know you for your background in science fiction writing, and some people may not be aware of the work that you've done in Tolkien. So would you like to tell us, first of all, how you were first introduced to Tolkien's work?
Well, my first memory of Tolkien's work is the yellow single volume edition of The Lord of the Rings with the illustrated cover by Pauline Baines. I tell you what, isn't it lovely to be able to talk about something with that degree of specificity and know that your audience will go, oh yes, I know exactly the one you're talking about, Una. And that was my dad's copy, and that was on the shelf. And before I could read, I was handling that book and telling myself stories about the pictures that are on it. They're quite creepy. She's got sort of golem-y type creatures crawling around the edge in the board. You can see the Fellowship on the front and that kind of thing. So I was telling myself stories about that. So I'm very old now. So we're talking about the 1970s. And then my dad was I think this is often the case, isn't it? You've got a parent who loves the books. My dad loved Lord of the Rings. He would read it again and again and again and again. And I have that copy. It's got his nameplate in it. He's been dead nearly 40 years, but I've got that copy. And I always felt like I knew it. I think he was sort of telling me bits and pieces from it well before I could read it. And then I think I probably had The Hobbit read to me by one of my siblings or so. I've got many older siblings. But then really the pivotal moment, and I think what makes me love Tolkien, was the BBC Radio 4 adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. And that goes out in, I think, 1981, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was 9 years old. And that's a perfect age. So myself, my dad, and one of my older siblings, every Sunday we would kind of run into the room where the radio was, and we would sit and listen. It was the half-hour episodes. We would listen to Lord of the Rings. And my older sibling recorded some of them. We had some of them on tape for a while. Not all of them. We had about maybe 13, 15 episodes. And I would listen to those again and again. And that really wasn't the first time that I started to get to grips with really quite a big story. And I think once you're bitten, you're bitten. And I've come back to, I then started exploring things like the Silmarillion, which I read when I was about 11. I didn't follow a word of it, of course, but I'm going to get to the end of this book if it kills me. And then just came back to the books again and again and again and again and again. My father sadly died when I was about 12 or 13, and I think it became a way of me connecting with him. So it's like I've been in a conversation with him. The book is about, Tolkien obviously experienced parental death quite young, and I think a lot of that is in the book. And the book is about mortality and dealing with the reality of mortality. And it was a great comfort to me, experiencing a loss like that, to have this book that I think spoke to me about that in certain ways. And then, of course, as I became a teenager, became mad about Éowyn and just adored her. Mm-hmm. So the books were there from, really pre-reading, and then through a sort of, life-changing experience. And then I've come back to them again, and particularly Lord of the Rings, I've come back to again and again and again over my life. And every time I come to it, it's a new section that speaks to me. Mm. It was Éowyn as a teenage girl. Later, it was the choices of Master Samwise, profoundly moving passages in there. And then more latterly, and this is where I've had a lot of fun in the past 10 years or so, it's the romance of Faramir and Éowyn that I've become absolutely potty about. But the book I come back to again and again, and new bits of it speak to me every single time. And after 40 odd years, I don't see that ever changing.
I think that's a lot of people's experience of Tolkien, isn't it? That we keep going back to him over and over and over again. And depending on where we're at in our lives and what's going on for us, just focusing more on different passages each time.
Yeah, and I think, he's doing the same with the book, isn't he? He's coming back to it again and again and again over his life. Or to the Legendarium, he's coming back again and again. But I think it's a mark of the greatness of the book, that it contains so much that you can... And many people, I think, have a book like this. For some people, it's Middlemarch, or it's War and Peace, or it's, another book that they return to. It might be a devotional text, something like that. And for me, it's Lord of the Rings. I just return to its comfort, its guidance, its consolation, its light relief. I love The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. It has everything in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're going to come back to your Éowyn and Faramir thing, because we're going to come back to that.
Thought we might.
Yeah. But so Éowyn spoke to you as a child. Is she still your favourite character?
Do you know, there's just been a wonderful poll that is it Green Door, the guys at Green Door Podcast have just been doing an amazing poll.
I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah, we're all as at time of recording, listeners, we're about a week and a half into lockdown in the UK, and Green Door Podcast has been doing this massive sort of Twitter polls. And a little spark of the devil got into me, and I thought, I'm going to get Éowyn into the final. We had a little Éowyn and Aragorn had a little face-to-face, a little sort of fight off, and Éowyn got through to the final. I'm delighted to say we mobilised the vote. Is she my favourite character? That's an impossible question to answer, I think, because there are so many great character turns in Lord of the Rings that are just little. You say who's my favourite character? I'd go. But there's the Shire Fox, there's Fatty Bolger, there's Lobelia, there's Yoreth, there's the Mouth of Sauron, who I adore. I think he's absolutely hilarious. There's Garnbury Garn. All these that, you know, there's Imrahil, all these tiny little parts that you realise that are just so deftly drawn. If you were casting it again, if you were making a TV series or a radio series again, a character actor would take that part, and it'd be just a few lines in the book, but they would grasp what's essential about it and run with it. Shire Fox might be hard to play, but
I'm sure it could be managed.
Old Man Willow, Tom Bombadil, Goldberry, and we've not even started mining the appendices, or they're just so great. In a couple of lines, a character is conjured to life. So Éowyn and Faramir, of course, I adore, and I come back to those characters again and again and contemplate them and think about them. But the book is full of lively and vivid, very dry, very heartfelt characters. So I couldn't choose. But if it came to a Twitter poll, then I would back Éowyn against.
That's fair enough.
To be fair, Gandalf won the whole thing, which I think is absolutely just.
Yeah, but you got Éowyn right up there with him.
I did. I thought I'm going to get her into that final. If I have to spend hours on Twitter, what else shall I do at the moment?
An excellent way of spending the time.
Exactly, yes. If I'm going to be locked down during a pandemic, I may as well get Éowyn into the final Twitter poll. So yes, exactly that.
Seems fair. I have no argument with that. So it's interesting that you've really focused on all of these many wonderfully drawn, as you say, minor characters. Do you think it's part of your own experience as an author yourself that has helped you to look at these smaller building blocks of Tolkien's work?
Oh, that's interesting. I think I primarily write novels or audio dramas, and novels for me are all about they're quite an expansive form. So you might be focused on a single character. So take my Star Trek. I did a novel for a show called Star Trek Discovery, and for one of the characters, a very popular character called Tilly, who's the lovely sort of nervy ensign with lots of curly red hair. And it's her story, but she intersects with a lot of people who are heroes and heroines of their own story. And that's what novel writing is for me, is that you might have a central character or a small group of characters, but they're intersecting with a vast world or universe of a kind of web of interconnected stories. And people are always the heroes of their own narrative. Mm-hmm. So the Shire Fox epitomizes this for me. He just wanders into the book for a paragraph. Hobbits, it's mighty queer, then he trots off and that's it. He's out of the book, never hears another thing about it. That fox has a wonderful, busy life. I've fan fiction that fox, actually. I've written a fan fiction about that fox where Gandalf goes to see Bombadil after the War of the Ring is over. And they find the fox and the vixen and the cubs. So the fox has gone off and had a happy life. And novels are that for me. And Lord of the Rings is so teeming with these small creations, and yet have these vast histories behind them, and just beautiful details such as Gimli receiving 3 pieces of Galadriel's hair. It's wonderful in itself. And then you realise that she's absolutely shading Fëanor. Whoa, that's a burn, So all of this, when you delve in deeper, it just gets richer and richer and richer. Moments like I possibly my other favourite book apart from Lord of the Rings is Unfinished Tales, which I think of as Tolkien fan fiction by Tolkien. And again, you just get these, moments like the Oath of Cirion and Eorl, all these stories that he barely had chance to narrate, and yet they're part of this great web, and they feel so vivid and true and alive. This sort of great thread of stories running through this tapestry. So those minor characters feel very novelistic to me. Yeah, and then the other thing I wrote, which is audio drama, is the characters sparking off the page. I think the voices and the characters of them. So yeah, I see what you mean.
It's interesting that you're talking about the Shire Fox, because there are a lot of different responses to the Shire Fox, and for a very long time my response was, oh dear God, this is the worst part of the book, because
so not
no, because it just didn't fit with the rest of the book. But I have to be honest, when I sat in Dimitra Fimi's lecture in Birmingham last summer, when she was talking about the fox, and she completely turned me around, and now I love the fox.
Well, that fox, you see, I have loved that fox for years. And if anyone hasn't heard Dimitra's talk, which I think is online, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah.
It was absolutely, I adore that fox. I've thought about the fox, I've read about that fox, I've banged on about that fox forever. And that talk just transformed it even further for me. I came away with that, I was just even loving that fox even more, to realise, and it was a proper wonderful piece of scholarship. She'd decoded the folklore and the meaning behind it, and that Tolkien knew that too, and that treasure has been waiting there for someone as skilled and attentive a reader as Dimitra to unpack it for us. And isn't that marvellous to think that a book that we know so well, and that I've been reading for the best part of 50 years now, still has these incredible treasures for us to discover when you're guided by someone like Dimitra. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm all about the Firefox.
Like I said, it totally transformed my reading of the Fox, because I'd been irritated by it. And that lecture, which I will hand on heart say is the best academic lecture I have ever had the privilege of listening to. And I know if Dimitra's listening to us, she's going to be blushing all over right now. But I absolutely mean it. I have never had the privilege of sitting in quite such a wonderful lecture before. Interactive as well as a moment of learning.
Yeah, and it kept on giving. I went off and sort of looked up recordings of the song we were all singing, and it turned out that John Pertwee, who's played one of the Doctors in Doctor Who, had recorded a version of it as well. So I found the LP of that. Me and my little girl have been learning it. It's a hilarious version of it. It's on YouTube. Just absolute joy. I also love the Troll song, and it connects up to that as well. So what a gift! Yeah, absolutely one of the best academic lectures. You're quite right. Just an absolute treasure trove. So go and find it online. Anyone who's not heard her talk about this yet, just amazing.
Oh yes.
So sharp off for the win.
yeah, because it is available online, I know, and if you can't find it anywhere else, then go to Dimitra Fimi's own website, and I'm pretty sure there'll be a link to it right there anyway. But yes, it's certainly trackable, because the whole thing was recorded. Joy of joys, which means I've actually been able to watch it back more than once since.
Oh, wonderful. Really, really good. Excellent. Yeah, but yeah, and then and a sing-along as well. Who's not happy?
Oh, right, yeah. And not usually my thing, but I sang along with the best of them there, because you just had to. You absolutely had to.
Yeah. Yeah, I quite agree. Many wonderful moments at that conference. That was one, and also I'm not religious at all, but I found the standing silence really, really profoundly moving. Actually, I'm not a great one for sort of ceremonies or rituals of that kind of thing, but there was something extremely moving about being in a room full of people who sort of shared this common love and just took this moment to share this moment of community and fellowship, and really, really moved by it, actually, in a way that I'm usually quite cynical about that kind of thing, but lovely, really lovely.
Yes, it was really sincere, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, completely sincere. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just to dial it back to your own experience of Tolkien again. So you said about how different parts of Tolkien's work have spoken to you over the years, and also you mentioned the unfinished tales. I mean, if I had to put you on the spot, would you be able to pick out a favourite part of Tolkien's work today?
No.
That's a fair answer.
Well, I just did a reading for the Tolkien Reading Day. A whole program of events was organised for it's about 15 hours of reading. And apologies to the organizer. I'm having one of those moments where I've completely blanked, but I know that we'll be able to put it in the show notes or something. But just a wonder, there was sort of 15 hours of readings. People like Brian Sibley, John Garth, Demetra Vimy had recorded something as well. And the section that I picked was from The Steward and the King, which is the meeting of Faramir and Éowyn in the Houses of Healing. And I picked it partly because I've become intensely absorbed in that part of the narrative over several years, but also because it had so much resonance of, I was thinking of people in lockdown, waiting to hear news, feeling isolated, feeling lonely, just waiting to hear that things had gone badly or that things had turned and were going well. So I found this was a piece of the book that I know extremely well. Sections of it I have memorized, had a new resonance again all of a sudden. And to be able to read it to a group of people who were similarly all locked down at home was profoundly moving. So that was my top pick when I thought, what should I read? But I love so much that just from Lord of the Rings, just from book 5 and book 6, you kind of go, oh, there's the Pyre of Denethor, there's the Rohirrim arriving, there's the Druidine, all just moment after moment after moment. So probably the Siege of Gondor and the House of Healing. I would pick, but blimey, the Pyre of Denethor, no tomb for Denethor, etc., etc. In Peter Vaughan's voice from the audio, but then the whole chunks of unfinished tales I adore. The Quest of Erebor, Gandalf kind of giving you the backstory. Oh, this is what I was thinking, and oh dear, it really wasn't working out well. And you see his sort of panic and how Gandalf the Grey is just keeping everything together. But then again, things like the Oath of Cirion and Eorl. Those would be my kind of top ones that I would pick out if you caught me on the spot. And then you start thinking about, you go, oh, Shire Fox, Tom Bombadil, all these sorts of other bits as well. But if you were to pin me down, then today, at this moment, it would be the meeting of Faramir and Éowyn in the House of Healing, I think. No surprise.
Well, that leads very nicely into my next bit of discussion, because I feel, and if you're happy to talk about this, that would be great. I feel we should return to the work that you've done with Faramir and Éowyn.
Oh, so the fan fiction, yes. Yeah, it's quite awesome.
Yeah, are you happy to talk about that?
Heavens, yes, absolutely. I don't think that's not a great national secret, is it?
No, not at all.
There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of words, I think. Yeah. So yes, that was a great surprise to me. That was the fault of the movies, and it wasn't even the. It was the fault of Fellowship of the Ring, oddly enough, in which neither of them appear. So I saw Fellowship of the Ring, which I saw. I'm sure there are people who trump me on this. I saw it once a week for 3 months, so I'm seeing it about 12 times in the cinema. Yeah, me and my other half kind of said to each other, "What should we do this weekend?" And we go, "Should we just see Fellowship of the Ring again? Because it's not going to be on indefinitely." But But yeah, let's just go and see that again. It's such a beautiful adaptation. I think it's a triumphant adaptation. I have problems with the other two films, but they're beautiful. It's a remarkable achievement. But Fellowship, I think, is an exceptional achievement. And then, so it's what's out in the December or the January, and round about the start of January, I think, because I was already a fan fiction reader and writer, had been for many years. I thought, I wonder if anyone's written any Tolkien stuff. And the point where I arrived, there wasn't very much, because the film, I mean, now we're talking kind of acres, and within quite a short space of time. And oddly enough, I went looking for stuff about that was set in Minas Tirith. I'm not quite sure what sent me looking for this. And I found two exceptional authors straight away, one of whom who'd been writing for a while had been writing before the films, called Dwimedine, who was writing a fantastic story about Denethor and Finduilas. And another writer who was starting to write just as she was watching the films, called Isabeau of Greenlee. And she was writing a terrific story about Faramir and the Athelian Rangers. And I just got hooked on these. And both writers were posting stories at the time. They were kind of updating stories. So I began to leave reviews, and then you begin to correspond. And then you think, oh, I might have a little go, actually. Thus, 15 years were disappeared. So, and then I just got I realised I tapped a creative vein, and ended up writing what was at the time was my first novel, which was a novel about the early years of the marriage of Faramir and Éowyn, and it's about post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's about PTSD and so forth. Mm-hmm. And that was my first novel. So I must have written that about must have been about 2003. I don't know, I can't remember now. But so that was phenomenal. I was writing that and posting it, and people were reading it. So I put a chapter up, and people were saying, "Oh, I hope this happens." And I'm going, "I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along." So it was a phenomenal experience, and it was a very busy time. Lots of people were writing, very interested in the films. The films were coming out, lots of stuff happening, lots of stories being posted. And I just got the bug. I couldn't stop writing. I learned a great deal about creative writing there, and I think at the same time I was professionalizing in my other fandoms. So I was moving from being a Deep Space Nine, Star Trek fan fiction writer to writing novels that were being commissioned and licensed and published. So I had to leave those worlds behind as a fan fiction writer. And what universe can you go and write fan fiction in that you're never, ever going to get a chance to be published? Tolkien. So, although, should the estate move on this one, I will very happily write my novel about the downfall of Numenor. I'd be delighted to do that for them. And I've not really stopped. I had a hiatus. I have a little girl who's 6. And I stopped writing fan fiction just before she was born, just because you're quite busy with a newborn.
Yeah, just a little bit,
yes. So that was kind of the thing that gave. But then about 18 months ago, I think she was just about to go off to school, and I kind of opened up my laptop again. And I thought, I'll just dust down a couple of pieces. And I've been writing fairly steadily since then. I've probably written about 120,000 words of Faramir and Éowyn and related stuff since then. I just find it tremendously creative, tremendously restful. There's a small group of writers who we sort of correspond and trade stories and ideas. And a lot of fan fiction is communal. It's about that, supporting each other and sparking ideas off each other and having fun together, like any kind of good creative community. So I still write a great deal. I love doing it. I think of it as like, because I write novels as my day job. It's almost like it's not quite like this. I guess if you're a musician, you would be practicing your scales, or you would be practicing pieces. So I feel like it's my practice. I have to do things I have to do performances that I'm paid for, if you see what I mean. I have to produce short stories or novellas or plays. But at the same time, I'm doing the thing that I enjoy doing, which is writing. So it must be like just a violinist just picking up the violin and having a little tootle on it in the evening. They've been out doing a matinee performance, and they just carry on playing in the evening. So that's how it feels to me. I just love doing it, and I love writing with the people that I'm writing with at the moment. So yeah, there's quite a lot out there. The thing about fan fiction as well, it's sort of the way that I write it. It's my critical response to Tolkien as well. So maybe aspects of the book I found problematic, comparative lack of women, or it has a Western gaze. What might it be like to be one of the liberated slaves in Mordor, or to be from Dunland? So to kind of spin the book in certain ways and interrogate the book in certain ways, I find it a very kind of effective way of doing that. So yeah, that's my. I write a lot of fan fiction. I love doing it. I'll carry on doing it. If the estate wants to pay me to do it, my inbox is open.
You're open to that possibility?
I certainly am. Who knows? Never say never.
But in the meantime, there's probably people listening who are thinking that they would quite like to find some of that fan fiction you've been writing. So where can people find it, Yuna?
Yeah. There's a fan fiction archive called Archive of Our Own, or AO3. Very easy to find online. And I have a pen name there, which is Altariel. So if you search for my name, you will find it. The funny thing about that pen name is that I never wrote fan fiction under a pen name. I always used my own name, right from when I first started writing it in fanzines in the mid 90s, and before I went online actually. And then I went online. I just used my own name for all my Star Trek stuff, and a lot of my stuff is quite. A lot of my science fiction stuff is quite bleak. Blake 7 is quite psychologically dark. The Star Trek stuff, I was dealing with some quite dark political issues. And when I sat down to write some romances, I thought, I'm feeling a bit embarrassed about this. I better use the pen name. So that's the only reason I've used a pen name. And then it's one of the worst kept secrets in fandom, I think. So my pen name is Altariel. I think everyone knows that's me. So if you fancy reading some stuff about Faramir and Eowyn and Denethor and Boromir, then go and have a dig around AO3 and you'll find my stuff. Fanfiction.net as well under the same pseudonym. So yeah.
Okay, well thanks for that, because I'm pretty sure some people are going to want to access some of that and take a look at the way in which you
Reading reviews. I love reviews.
Oh, reviews are gold. Yes, reviews are wonderful.
Yeah, that little adrenaline hit. Oh, somebody loves me.
Yes, I mean, I'm on AO3 as well, but not as a writer. I've done a lot of recording. Podfics, yes.
Yeah.
And yes, reviews make you feel so happy.
They really do. Honestly, I can't say. It just really, really, you open your inbox, you think, what fresh hell is there? Oh, lovely. It's a review for something I wrote 15 years ago. I feel so much better now.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Altariel. Altariel.
Altariel. I'm terrible at spelling off the. It's Galadriel's other name, Altariel. Yeah.
Right. Okay. On AO3, or Archive of Our Own. Run, folks. Don't walk. Honestly, that would be my advice there. Okay. So to come back to your sort of wider experience of Tolkien, obviously you've approached Tolkien in lots of different ways, both as a reader, and that in itself has changed over time, but also as a writer, and a very prolific one in Tolkien fan fiction. Does the way in which you have interacted with his work, has that changed over time at all?
Yes, definitely. I mean, simply by virtue of being, not 7 or 8 anymore. That's most simply it. I think when I was a teenager, it was about memorizing the facts. I had the Middle Earth quiz book. I used to go through it again and again and again and again, and kind of testing myself and doing all the things that you do at that stage. So practicing the runes, or memorizing the kings of Arthedain, or the chieftains of Arnor, whatever they are. I can't remember now. I'm going to get picked up on that. The kings of Arnor, she says, safer bet. So that kind of accrual of knowledge and expertise, and tracking down. I loved maps. copying the maps, or I really enjoy Tolkien artwork, sort of tracking stuff down. We're talking about the early and mid 80s now, so it wasn't like I could kind of fire at the internet and go, bring me art. You had to kind of go on quite a dedicated hunt to find this stuff. And the History of Middle Earth was coming out at the time, so I was probably a bit young for those. In it, I think they're quite a big ask for a sort of 13 or 14-year-old to read without someone explaining, this is how a book like this works. So I sort of bounced off large sections of that, but bits did stick. Things like The Lost Road, where there was a stronger, clear narrative, I think, and later the writing of the history of Lord of the Rings. I got very absorbed in that narrative, chiefly I think because you would find sort of treasures like the names of Imrahil's children, or that kind of thing, about whom large pieces of fan fiction have been, much fan fiction has been written. So I think as you mature as a reader, particularly if you're in the kind of discipline that means you're reading a lot of books. So, I'm a novelist and have been an academic. You're just reading a lot. Your own sort of facility at reading text changes. So I feel very privileged that there's a book that I can read. I can still access the pleasure of reading it as the child and the adolescent that I was. But at the same time, it inspires and challenges me, and makes me want to engage with it on a mature intellectual level. So it's lovely to have. I guess for other people it's Ulysses or Dickens or whatever it is, or poetry. For me, it's Lord of the Rings. So I have changed, and the way that I read the book changes. But everything is a sort of deepening and an enhancement of my enjoyment of Tolkien. I think I'm quite focused. It's Lord of the Rings that I really go back to. Mm-hmm. I think. So I do read I've read the Silmarillion many times. I've read history, all of these things, but it is Lord of the Rings that I come back to most of all. Mm-hmm. That can't be a week doesn't go by that I don't flick it open and read a little bit. Usually the House of Healing. Let me just check the exact wording of that sentence, because I'm sure I can squeeze another nuance out of it. So. And isn't it lovely to have something that you can sort of? I think not only that you can be that passionately absorbed in, but that there are other people that when you turn to them and go, look, they go, I know, it's amazing. So Shire Fox, yes, people don't think you're crackers. So that's a lovely aspect of it as well, I think. And for pre-internet, going to my old lady mode. Often, I was a girl at a convent school, so liking things like science fiction and Tolkien, it was sort of like people looking at me going, "No, we're interested in really quite different things." So it was you're quite lonely as a geek a girl in a convent school in the 1980s. So to be able to sort of share those passions now is lovely. It's lovely.
It is a joy, isn't it? We're very lucky to have the kinds of communities that we can now access.
Yeah, that not even a global pandemic can get in the way of.
Absolutely not.
Exactly that. So my reading of the book has changed as I change and have become more experienced and gone through life.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned earlier that you have a little girl. Mm. Have you started reading Tolkien to her or with her?
Yes, I have. Now, my little girl is very funny in that she knows that I love books, which means that she will not be caught dead reading a book in front of me. However, we have started on. I've tried her. I tried her a couple of times on The Hobbit, and she was sort of not speaking to me, Mum. And I had a little think about this. Okay, right then. And I said to her, I said, would it make a difference if we changed Bilbo to Belladonna and made it a girl? And she said, yes, I'm here for that. So we're sort of reading it intermittently. She sort of goes through patches of wanting it read to her, and we've just got to Mirkwood, and it has made all the difference. She's interested because she feels like there's a space for her in the book, and I've told her lots of. I suspect this is what my dad did with me. I've told her lots of stories from the book, so she knows a lot about Éowyn. In fact, we were playing Éowyn fighting the Witch King in the garden just the other day. So she knows about Éowyn. What else does she know about? Oh, she's mad about Gollum. She thinks he's absolutely brilliant. So I've shown her little clips from the movie, and of course she's met Gollum in The Hobbit. And I said, there's lots more, and he's in Lord of the Rings, and it's really important in Lord of the Rings. So she sort of asked about that. So she knows chunks of this. She knows about the One Ring. She knows about the Dark Lord. She knows about all sorts of bits and pieces, just as she knows about Éowyn and Faramir. Obviously, she's not much time for him. He's obviously a bit wet. You could be you could be Éowyn. So I'm sort of gently, and I've got 3 beautiful pieces of Anka Iceman art up. So they're sort of there, very much. And all my books are on the shelf. So it's like me at that age, knowing that the stuff is there and just sort of being drip, drip, drip. That's how you get them. So yes, it's been an interesting experience, and making Bilbo Belladonna was absolutely key. Absolutely key. I get the pronoun wrong. She's straight on it. It's like, it's not he, it's she. So
good for her.
Yeah, no mucking around. I found somebody had done a lovely piece of artwork of a little girl, Bilbo. And I showed her that and said, that's Belladonna. And she's loved it. She's now asking me to make Sam and Frodo female as well. So Frodo, I think, is going to be Frida Baggins. So let's see.
Whatever works. Yeah. And good for her for knowing what she wants out of the story.
Yeah, and it doesn't make a blind bit of difference, to be honest. It really doesn't change the story. I was all ready to make Gandalf a woman as well, but sure, no, that's fine. The beard stuff won't work so well. So the heroine, the little character who's a bit frightened by the journey and is experiencing it, is someone she now relates to. So so that's how we're doing it.
That's really cool.
So ask me again in a year and a half, and let's see how we're getting on with the Silmarillion.
That's quite ambitious.
That's a tough ask, I think. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that having gone through this conversation, that you would recommend Tolkien's work, but to kind of turn that question around a little bit, who would you recommend Tolkien's work to, and in what way would you recommend him? For what reasons?
I think it's a really interesting question because after Return of the King came out, we had surely reached saturation points. There must have been nobody in a substantial part of the planet who hadn't consumed something to do with Lord of the Rings at that point, and would either know whether or not they liked it. I will say that to my bafflement, some people who swear off Tolkien would come back to me 2 years later going, but Game of Thrones, Una. And I'm like, the comedian Stuart, not to offend any listeners who love it, the comedian Stuart Lee calls it Peter Stringfellow's Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, why would you choose? Why would you choose that when you can have this? So I kind of sorry anyone who's a big fan of it. I sort of feel that surely there's a substantial percentage of the population that knows whether or not it likes Tolkien, and nothing that I can say will convince people otherwise. So the only way we can do it to kind of get global saturation is to get them young. All those people who weren't there for the film, we've just got to get in there, I think. And whatever it takes, if it means making every single one of the dwarves a girl, then that's what we have to do to kind of more seriously. People do have this sort of Marmite reaction to Tolkien's work, don't they? They kind of go, no, absolutely not for me. And I do think there's very little that you can do there. All I can do is say it's a book that has spoken to me, and it may surprise if you come to it with an open mind. It may surprise you. There are passages of extreme beauty and melancholy, and sudden joy, and sudden fear, and sudden clarity, and it has brought me great joy and consolation over the years, and I would love to bottle that and have you experience that. But for some people, it's never going to work for whatever reason. It just they can't get past the strange names and the unfamiliar country. But I think for some of us, that's exactly part of the magic of it, exactly part of the joy of it. So, would I recommend Tolkien's work? It is a hard question to answer because, of course, I would. Of course, I would. But I probably know whether you're the right kind of person, whether you're the kind of person who's likely to like it. So I would pick quite carefully who I recommended it to.
That seems fair. Yeah. Well, that sounds like the perfect note on which to end, Yuna. And I want to thank you very much for giving us your time today and sharing with us your fascinating experiences with Tolkien. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Real privilege to come on and talk about it. So thank you very much.
We are so thankful that we have such gracious scholars and fans who want to share their Tolkien experience with us and with you.
We have a lot of fun making these podcasts.
So much fun. It's always exciting to talk to fans and scholars about their Tolkien experience.
If you want to know more about the ways to connect with this episode's guest that they mentioned in this interview, we provide show notes at tolkienexperience.com. Also, don't forget to follow the podcast on your favourite social media sites.
That's right. We're on Facebook as Tolkien Experience and also on Twitter as @TolkienEXP. So don't forget to like, follow, share, and comment because we love interacting with you just as much as we enjoy talking with our guests. You can also follow our personal Twitter accounts. I am @LukeB.Shelton.
You can also look for me on Twitter, where I am @AaronLPalmadill. You can find the podcast on all major podcast services, including Apple, Stitcher, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We truly hope that, in a way, it contributes to your own Tolkien experience.